Before I start this review, it saddens me to say that Rick May, the voice of Dr. M, passed away earlier this year from coronavirus. May was also known for other roles such as the soldier from Team Fortress 2 and Peppy from Star Fox 64. I would like to extend my deepest condolences to May's friends and family, as he was a truly talented voice actor and he will be deeply missed. After the massive success of Sly 2, Sucker Punch decided to continue the franchise for one more installment. Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves was released a year later in 2005, and it really improved on a bunch of gameplay elements and introduced a ton of new ones. In fact, I think they added too much variety, but I'll explain that shortly. The story opens in Medea's Res, where we see Sly and the gang trying to break into a massive vault. We are hinted at a bunch of new characters, and then we are guided through the prologue until we are met by the game's main antagonist. The prologue ends as Sly is captured by a horrible monster, and he flashes back to the events that led up to the situation. Sly explains that sometime after the events of Sly 2, he came into contact with a man named McSweeney, who used to work for Sly's father back in the day where they pulled off a successful string of heists. McSweeney then tells Sly about the Cooper Vault, which is a secret location where all of the members of the Cooper clan have hidden their wealth over the years behind a door that only a true Cooper can open. Upon reaching the island where the vault is, they find that another former member of Sly's father's gang named Dr. M has already constructed a massive fortress while trying to break into the vault over the course of several decades. With such heavy security, Sly concludes that the job will be impossible unless they grow their ranks and recruit a team of talented thieves to pull off this job. Throughout the game, Sly will travel to various locations and recruit new members of the gang who will bring their own unique talents in order to get into the vault. I have to say, the story has a great setup, but it doesn't always deliver in terms of its execution. The first episode in Venice kicks off really well as Sly and Bentley try to convince Murray to return to the team. After Bentley's injury at the end of Sly 2, he was left paralyzed from the waist down, and Murray blamed himself for the accident and left the team to explore new walks of life. I have to admit, the character development is really good, and I found myself connecting with them a lot better. You really feel the emotional scarring that Murray has gone through, and how Bentley has to adjust to life in the wheelchair, but doesn't let it slow him down. Sly and Bentley are voiced really well, but Murray's voice is much higher in pitch despite having the same voice actor, but it didn't distract from his performance. Unfortunately, Carmelita's voice actress has changed yet again, and this time she has this really awkward Italianish accent that really doesn't suit her character. The new gang members are pretty cool, but sometimes they are awkwardly written. The fact that they are playable is a really nice touch, but it was disappointed that they aren't selectable from the safe house, so they're only limited to specific jobs. You have Murray's aboriginal teacher simply called the Guru, who can transform into objects to hide from enemies, and can also possess them to make them jump, attack each other, and ram into objects. Penelope is an RC specialist voiced by Annette the voice of Freddy Fish. She can use a small car and a helicopter to pull off specific jobs, but the only time when she is playable is in this really poorly designed boss battle on a pirate ship, and it's surprisingly really boring. Some of the enemies from previous games return to put aside past grudges and work together towards a greater good, such as the Panda King, who fights using Flame Fu and can launch fireworks at targets, as well as Dimitri, who is only playable in these diving sections that are alright, but I didn't have too much trouble getting used to them. Also, for the first time, Carmelita is playable in a few missions, and while her controls are a bit awkward by today's standards, it's still fun to use the shock pistol. I was never a fan of the toggle lock-on button, but it works alright, so I won't judge it too harshly. Sly and Murray still have all their abilities, along with some new additions such as a ball form for Murray where he can roll and bounce to reach new heights. This time, he can also pickpocket enemies, or rather shake them violently over his head until their loot drops. Sly, on the other hand, can perform a bunch of different charged cane attacks by pressing triangle followed by a face button. Combat in general has been improved as enemies actually react to what you do, as some will jump or dodge your attacks, and a few can even block. Bentley still controls well despite his new build, and he has outfitted his chair with a lot of new tools, such as his grapple cam that can lure enemies and shoot things. He can also pickpocket enemies by using a fishing pole with a magnet attached to it. It's actually pretty cool and controls in a way to fit the character. I just wish it didn't have to be assigned as a power-up. I mean, why not just map it to the circle button? Something I really like is that there's now a hazard room where you can play through elaborate tutorials to get the hang of how the characters control. It's actually really good for new players. There's a massive dose of variety in the gameplay, which is both good and bad. The elements that worked well in Sly 2 have been improved, and there are some new additions that really fit, such as these painting saves where you have to search the artwork for a hidden combination. The first time I did this, it was actually really fun and rewarding. You also have a bunch of stuff that really doesn't work, such as these pirate ship battles that are very slow and unexciting. Yeah, Assassin's Creed this is not. Unfortunately, the clue bottles have been removed, but there are some small challenges instead, which are alright, and there are even a handful of treasure hunts, which are pretty cool. Now, there is nothing wrong with wanting more gameplay elements. It's just that my concern is that some of these inclusions took away from the experience and didn't really feel like they belonged in a Sly Cooper game. Something that I noticed immediately is that while the first two games had a lot of muted colors to give a dark and stealthy atmosphere, everything is very bright in Sly 3. Even the aura on Sly's cane is significantly brighter, and it took me a while to realize why. On the original PlayStation 2 version, you had the option to play certain missions in 3D. There was a pair of blue and red 3D glasses that came with the game, and it's pretty self-explanatory. As a kid, this blew my mind, but looking back, the 3D experience never really worked that great to begin with. Another gimmick that they throw into the series is two-player minigames which include hackathons, pirate ship battles, plane duels, and a cops and robbers game. It's actually alright. Unfortunately, there are a few more issues I have with this game. While I enjoyed the interactions between characters, I found most of the villains to be really weak. I will say that it's interesting to be fighting individual villains that aren't connected to each other through some sort of gang, but a lot of them are just uninteresting. You have the Italian lion named Octavio who wants to force people into liking opera again or else he'll destroy their buildings. I know it's trying to be humorous, but it's just so silly that it was hard to take seriously. One of the villains is a literal mask that flies around, so yeah. There's also the Black Baron, who is an expert pilot who runs a dogfighting competition in Holland, and it is later revealed that this is a disguise created by Penelope so that she is eligible to qualify for the competition. Alright, I might get flack for saying this, but Penelope is a poorly written character. While she does have mechanical expertise, none of the same personality traits she had as the Black Baron carry over, so it just feels like they're completely different characters. There is also no build-up to any sort of reveal, so it just comes across as inconsequential. There's also a chapter where she gets captured, and we have to spend the second half of the episode rescuing her. It's such a forced angle on a character that we are hardly acquainted with. That being said, I will say that some of the villains are actually really good. Dr. M was really well developed, and even the antagonist from the fourth chapter, General Tsao, was amazing. He's completely driven by ancestral pride, and carries a very sexist attitude towards women for the sake of strengthening his own lineage, which is really heavy subject matter, and I'm impressed with how it was handled. Finally, I do have to discuss the ending of the game because there are plenty of mixed feelings on it. You know, spoilers and all. During the final battle with Dr. M, Carmelita breaks into the inner sanctum of the Cooper Vault, which is such a tremendous plot hole that I'm surprised nobody draws attention to it, and Sly literally takes a bullet to save Carmelita. He gets knocked out and pretends to have amnesia in an attempt to put their history aside. Carmelita tells Sly that they are partners in Interpol, and they escape together. In a really emotional scene, Sly abandons his gear on the island to lead his gang to the hidden fortune. The rest of the gang disbands to follow their own paths, and Bentley reveals that he is working with Penelope to create something even bigger. A time machine. Holy crap, a time machine? There is so much potential in that concept, and it really set the stage for new installments, but Sucker Punch had made up their minds that this would conclude the series until Sanzaru Games picked up the torch. I mean, the ending is okay, but admittingly it's kind of bleak, and I was expecting a little bit more out of it. But either way, Sly 3 is not a flawless game, and still has its weaknesses, but I could never dislike it. It has great gameplay, the writing is great in places, and I do love how missions are replayable, which makes the game fun to explore. I really wish they did that in Sly 2. Sly Cooper has always been a treasured series by many, and I'm sure it will stay that way for years to come. Pick up the Sly Collection if you haven't already.